It does something funny where once it starts live streaming, it's on my computer and then I get an echo. Okay, we are now live. Fantastic. And it looks like all of us are on the screen. Great. I think if I change to speaker view, that might get different. Okay, fantastic. Wonderful. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our last event of Tucson Poetry Festival 2021. My name is Melanie Madden. I'm Executive Director of the Tucson Poetry Festival, and I'm excited to present our open mic right now, featuring readers who participated in our workshops yesterday, presenting some of their work, original work, perhaps works in progress. And we are going to get started with our first reader, Angela.
Okay.
And I will mute myself and get out of your way. Angela, take it away.
All righty. Hi, everyone. I am Angela Hill, and I'm going to read two poems from a collection I've been working on this year. I turned 50 in February, and so I have a goal that I'm going to write 50 poems for this year. So and they are mostly about things I am, and I didn't really realize that was happening. So I'm a teacher. So this first one is about that, and it's called The Death of American Education. All flags at all public schools in all of America should always be flown at half-mast. Mourning the commonplace catastrophic shooting deaths averaging every 77 days. Lamenting the fearful inside lives deliberately destroyed by bullies, both adolescent and adult. Sorrowing the martyr teachers as they suffer to their second jobs, exhausted just to make ends meet. Grieving every lost class classified as an art and thereby unworthy of the ignorant land's money. Despairing the children who weren't supposed to be left behind, but blend into the faithlessness of impossibly filled classrooms. When did teaching and learning become a slow death? Knowledge's knife dulled by a lifetime of trying to cut through ridiculously regenerating red tape. Why am I still here? I thought I knew. Because these days, no matter my current level of dying, I can no longer believe any of our heroic battling even matters. As the children I've pledged allegiance to are used against me until I'm considerably less than half, rope chafing, dying dangling from the flagpole they've hung me from. And then the second one I'm going to read is about being a fighter, and it's called Warning, Not Fragile. My thighs aren't just thick, they're colossal, crumbling marble. My solidity, a mass equation, gargantuan in its algorithm. The way I throw my weight around behind a lightning quick 1-2 punch is sure to leave you bruised and breathless. Watch out. Those heavy hands are followed by the aforementioned thunderous aligned thighs, firing from limber childbearing hips set now to destruction, their creation long done. Understand this. The only thing soft here is my heart, and you probably can't handle that either. This thickness burns hotter than any thin thing you've got, a high fire stoked by every bloody battle sought and won. Beware, son, lest you get burned. I am not fragile. That label long gone does not define me ever, never again. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. That was fantastic. Really appreciate. Our next reader will be Chibi.
Hi. Thank you guys for having me. Thank you for hosting this also. I'm coming to you all the way from San Antonio, Texas. So it's great to be able to participate virtually in events like this. So I'm going to share a couple poems. This first one comes from a larger collection that I've been working on for a moment and greatly benefited from Eduardo's revision workshop yesterday. So props to him, thanks to him, and to y'all for putting it on. This is called You Deserve an Apology. You deserved the doe-eyed dreams before the doubt. Septic, seeping, plagued everything you deserved before you looked for answers in other people's approval. Brutal, burying your self-worth before someone else did so the dirt would land like snow. You deserved better than good for now. What did you think you deserved when you thought you deserved better than yourself? You deserve an apology for tinfoil blinders, inoculating you from ambition, from yearning, from daydreams of what did you want to be when you grew up, turning maybe this time into probably never. How sad. You couldn't see your gleam radiating in the reflection of other people's eyes. When did you forget you are more than body cages, insecurities, limbs, more than shattered glass, the doors stacked, a blockade of ruthless, selfish decisions, suffocating the future you lost sight of for a quick fix, the wanderlust, lost to fear of the unknown. A rented room gave comfort. It used to give the boot to get up, get going. Now you're learning. Tie your shoes again. Don't be so scared to get a little dirt in your eyelashes. You deserve to experience the soaring and swan dive. You already jumped. It didn't kill you. Give yourself credit for where you are after everything you've been through. You are deserving, at the very least, of that. And I'm going to read one more very, very, very short one. It's spring over here. We've been gardening a lot, and this had me thinking. That's what inspired this poem. It's called European Ivy. European ivy. The plant that's colonized entire countries. An invasive species consuming the soil. Engulfs space like cigarette smoke, crowding out all the oxygen, then lung, then blood, and snuffs out the possibility of any other life. Webbed across the surface, a green lattice of duck-footed leaves smothering, a home for rats harboring diseases impossible to uproot once it lands, rustic amber syrup spilling over mossy bark, over native life, over and over, it gorges, indiscriminate, and halts the growth of what was already there. It does not like inclusivity, does not care what dies. Its only purpose is its own imperialistic expansion. If only it had a flag, history might excuse the conquest. Thank you.
Thank you, Chibi. All right, so that's two poets with flags in their poems. Let's see if any more flags come up. There's a certain alchemy that always happens when you curate events like this and you find those threads that wind their way through all of the work. So our next reader will be Tina.
Yeah, thank you. The first thing I'm going to read, I'm sorry, I've got a dog here who just is so lonely. In Linda's workshop yesterday, we did a writing seed and then we did pieces based on that. So the first is a haiku from the writing seed. 3 boys, a plastic bag, floating like a raven's wing along the highway. Since it's haiku in short, I'll read it again. 3 boys, a plastic bag, floating like a raven's wing along the highway. The second is, we'll call it a prose poem. It's just a really short thing, also from the writing seed. A raven flew overhead while I was picking up candy wrappers in my yard. I gave him a few raw croaks, but he wasn't fooled. He kept flying, a steady flapping north-northeast. Ravens know about people like me. He'd rather cruise the highway, following the shoulder to see what's died this morning, what was crushed by humans in the night. The next thing I want to read is a Japanese death poem that came out of a workshop at the Cochise Creative Writing Celebration Open Mic. And I don't have the name of the form, but apparently it's a thing in Japan to write death poems when you're on your deathbed. Not quite there yet, getting there, but you know. The form is 57577, so it's a 5-line syllabic poem. First breath and last breath. Open parentheses, then closed parentheses. Space between filled with what? Coffee, beer, rows of glasses, and all the stories we told. The next poem is a found poem about the influenza epidemic or pandemic or whatever in Washington, D.C. in 1918, and it comes out of a Washington Post article. Before the vaccine, September 21st, John W. Clore died. September 25th, John Janes died. September 27th, Amos Maddox, Grayson Kaufman, and Pearl Morgan died. It had begun. Fear, courage, and tragedy. A fever, cough, a sore throat, sometimes a nosebleed. It could kill in a day, a week, 2 weeks. Terrifying. Nurses, doctors, soldiers, sailors, federal war workers, Marines, people in their teens, 20s, and 30s. The city was a harvest field. The Surgeon General warned against tight shoes, tight clothing, tight gloves. People chewed their food thoroughly, drank water every morning, ate raw onions, swallowed sour milk. Chiffon veils appeared in the stores. Windows were kept open even in the rain. The death toll climbed. The Library of Congress closed. Children were orphaned. Soldiers were ordered to dig graves. Fear, suspicion, and panic prevailed, but only for a time. In 1938, Jonas Salk and Thomas Francis created the first flu vaccine. So I felt that was kind of like a sort of a replay of our last year. It was kind of interesting to find that article. Thursday was my immunity day, 2 weeks after my second injection. And the University of Arizona Poetry Center had a prompt where you would read a poem about thank you vaccine and respond to it. And if you go to the University of Arizona, their Poetry Center, you can add to the poem that's online. I just wrote mine, I didn't put it up there, but thank you, Moderna. Dear vaccine, you walk the throbbing hallways of my veins, teaching my cells to sing a new song, hammer out danger, helping them to see what they never saw before. You coat the red walls of that restless stream with a portrait of danger. Graffiti of hope, blessed false alarm, thank you for visiting my sequestered home, obliterating that stranger. You've thrown open the shutters and tossed fear out the window along with dust bunnies. Esteemed family, welcome. Please enter. Thank you.
Thank you, Tina. Oh, that Dear Vaccine poem really got me. I felt that very much, very much. Thank you so much for sharing. Right, I'm very excited to introduce Monique, who will be reading for us next. And if any of the other folks in the Zoom also want to read, please direct message me so that I know to introduce you. Please take it away, Monique.
Thank you. Thank you for putting on this festival. And thank you to the teachers yesterday, and glad to see you here, Linda. Lost. My father has become wound up from concentrating on the Lincoln logs and the little house we are building together. He throws some pieces down, others he holds tight. Papi, let's go for a drive, I tell him, taking the tiny logs from his fingers and turning his chair to help him stand and grab hold of his walker. He doesn't fall asleep like usual on the 45-minute drive south to Sahuarita. He becomes more and more anxious, a wild look in his eyes. He's afraid and doesn't understand why. I am worried and keep watch on his hands, ready to bat them away if he reaches for the steering wheel. When we arrive, Papi stays in the car while I knock on the door. In the driveway, my daughter stands by the car and hugs him through the window, gets him a glass of cold water, and tells him she loves him. I hold the baby and tell her, say hi to Tata. I put her feet inside the window and tell my father, look at her cute little toes. She smiles and waves to him. Her round face is flawless. She sticks out her tongue. I'm going to eat you up, I tell her. That's what Papi used to say to babies. Papi tries to smile. I see his eyelids are bigger than they used to be and his eyes more cloudy. His brown skin is beautiful. I hold his hand and tell him he's okay, that he is safe with us, that he doesn't have to worry. I tell him, look at the baby, she loves you. He answers, yes. Postcard. If I move to green grass and tall trees, or to the rhythm of ocean and sand, I will miss the lizard on wire-thin toes and the roadrunner, tail bobbing, who is never caught. I'll miss the white saguaro crowns of May, prickly pear blooms that are yellow or fuchsia. I'll miss the ocotillo bending to the wind, its thorns and leaves turned green, its flowers red-orange as the lipstick my mother wore. Yesterday in Linda's class, we did a Fibonacci sequence, which is 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, and 13 syllables per line. So here's what I wrote yesterday. White dress, wedding, in a box, preserved pristine. We had to close the bar early. Take it, she said. I don't want to see it anymore. And then my last one is called Desert Moon. Loving you is like loving the moon, uninhabitable rock that reflects silver light. Thank you.
Thank you, Monique. Those were beautiful. And we were able to get a couple more volunteers. So I'm excited to introduce a couple of Tucson Poetry Festival board members to read. Next, we will have Richard. Richard, take it away.
Hi, thank you. This has been such a great weekend, and this is a piece. It's a draft, but I started it yesterday during the workshops. Working title, I guess, is Consideration. Light through sun-pierced canopy graces individual flowers blooming below. Beam pointing out consideration, golden fingers, lavender revealings. And then the next poem I'd like to read was recently published. It's called Bird Chooses to Make a Habitat of Heart, and it's in Impossible Archetype, the latest issue. This is after Maggie Nelson, who wrote the fantastic book Bluettes, and there was a particular line in there that I was working from. So again, this is Bird Chooses to Make a Habitat of Heart. I loved him, still do. There's no getting around the pecking, scrabbling, claw mark scarring, no chasing the bird out once it's found its way in. A broom does not reach to the ceiling where the bird flutters in panic. Love cannot be abandoned. The foul nest only has so much room. Give me back my heart, beautiful bird. Mistake me for an open window. Thank you.
Love that one. Love it. That was awesome, Richard. Thank you so much. All right, so now I'm going to introduce Laura, who's going to read. Let's see. You ready, Laura?
Hi. So I'm also going to read from my workshop poems. Thank you, Linda, for the inspiration. The kisses right back. It was amazing and very inspiring. Of course, these are rough drafts, but still I felt inspired. So the first is the haiku I wrote. Tiny dream aquarium. Small scale crab escapes. Flees with minute swamp turtle. And that was from the seeds that we wrote. And my Fibonacci form was also from the initial free writing seeds that we wrote. Dream, dwarf, seascape, bottled up, let the water out. Small scale creatures escape in room, stand on a chair until I think to make another. That one was more challenging to do, but fun. And then I'm also going to read, we did an exercise of making fiction to poetry. And my writing group behind me will appreciate this because they know the fiction it comes from. Blink, snap to action, drink the whiskey, split the winnings, quick roll the bills, time to hightail it, almost out when boss steps in our path. And then the last one I'm going to read, thank you, is actually from Jake Skeet's workshop. And we were doing poems as ecology and looking at maps of significant places and placing our poems in the maps. Bigoted golf course, source of exclusion, always and still, within walking distance, but closed to us. Somehow we found our way in through the holes in the fence to sled in winter on its perfect hills. And in the green of summer, in the green of summer nights, to write messages of inclusion in their posh private sand traps. Thanks, everybody. And thank you for the inspirational workshops that got some creative flow going.
Thank you, Laura. That was great. I love the poems. I also love that we can hear the bird song where you are. So in this virtual environment with people coming in from all over, I love that there's that little bit of Tucson ambient noise. And can I introduce Mary Martha? Oh, yes. Love it. Love it. It's a little overcast today. The sky is not so blue, but it's kind of nice. All right, Mary Martha, we'd love to hear your poems.
Well, thank you. And I'm going to go to the table because my knees aren't anywhere near as good as Laura's are, getting down on the floor. All right. I'm going to read two shorter ones and one longer one. The first one's called The Wine. The wine is good. It takes me past the loneliness and into the part that isn't true, but the part that I remember, where I was loved and liked, and when I could have moved into the being of me that I made when I knew I could be. This is a silly bit of words. How do you ask what is lost? How do you say you are so sad? This is called The Dimple. My dimple has degenerated into a crevasse. It slid from my cheek to my chin. My mother used to say the dimple formed because a fairy kissed me on my cheek. I suppose my lover now is age. This is a longer poem. It's a published poem. This is when I lived on a ranch out in western Nebraska. And the Nebraska Humanities had a call out for poems because they were starting a new publication. And they chose 10 poems, 10 poets from Nebraska to be published. So this is called Morning in February. The tractor would not start. The snow was piled to the tops of the fence posts, time to feed. And the tractor would not start. The cattle milled in crushed, unmelted snow and bellowed into cold wind. She sat small and vulnerable, bundled so tightly in heavy clothes, feeling unable to move on the cold tractor seat. Separated not from the cold, but from the wind inside the glass cab. And he pushed on the white button on the ether can, directing the spray on the engine that loomed more and more inhuman. She waited tensely for the signal to turn the key, as she waited tensely for all his signals. A coyote moving on the edge of the herd caught her eye, its head down but alert, moving at a slow lope. She could sense its drive to search for the rich red afterbirth, to feast, to devour. An angry pounding on the pane. She had once again missed his signal. Thank you. Here you go.
Thank you, Mary Martha. Those were also beautiful poems. Thank you all so much for a wonderful open mic, for a wonderful, what's the word that I'm looking for? I'm going to put this back on the gallery view so everyone's on the screen who wants to be. Yes, it's wonderful to see you all in this virtual space. I'm very much hoping and praying that next year we will gather in real space, but also the beauty of the accessibility of this online experience has given us something to think about how we can make events more accessible in the future. So thank you all again for spending some time sharing your brilliance, for being a part of this wonderful community event. And I like pointing out that we are independent, we are grassroots, we are a nonprofit, and we provide these events annually at no cost to our audience, but we always appreciate donations. You can go to TucsonPoetryFestival.org, look for our donate page, not our donut page. We don't have one of those, but we do have a donate page. And anything that you can share is greatly appreciated and goes to the poets. We pay poets for their hard work. We know that when we hear a poem, it seems like such a simple thing, but of course we know all of the time and all of the education and all of the seeds that go into that. And so thank you again all for making the time in this very chaotic year, in this very chaotic week, in this very chaotic weekend, to be a little bit still and make room for language and the kinds of change that we can make in ourselves and the world when we let ourselves be moved by language. Thank you all. We'll see you next year.